Hello.
Hello.
I'm a filmmaker. I like to make documentaries about people whose stories take the audience on a journey to somewhere they may never have been. Documentaries that introduce viewers to people they may never meet. So I'd like to talk about how people are at the heart of any story and how films can connect people to each other. Our differences aren't new. Do we really think they just popped up today? Do we really need to celebrate them or simplify them into neat categories? People are so much more than that. When I was growing up in America, I was often told about the tigers roaming the streets of Kolkata, where I was born. I remembered the cars, the buses, the crowds of people. There were sidewalk vendors selling street food and rickshaws ambling by. But I had never seen any tigers there. And those who told me this had never been to India, but they knew. They were sure they knew my experience. And it was always followed by the question, when are you going back? It wasn't an option. They knew what I had to do. As a young girl, I always wondered if any of it made sense. Why would they think I'd go back to a place where I'd have to go to school through streets filled with tigers? But maybe all the questions came from the same place, where differences are at best ridiculous and at worst frightening, and always brimming with judgment. So at the age of 6, I learned to talk back. I spoke of the hippopotamus I'd seen on my way to school in America. When I was told that I spoke English so well, I didn't have the patience to explain that English is widely spoken in India. I would reply politely, "Thank you. How's your Bengali?" Yes, it was an arrow aimed at their condescension. And just like eventually, my answer to, "When are you going back?" became, "I don't know. What about you? When are you going back?" So I learned that we have to change how we view our differences. When we judge our differences, we stop the conversation. When we know everything, there's nothing left to discover. It's not about good and bad, the haves, the have-nots, and those who think they have it all. It's not about who we are, where we come from, or which tigers we need to be saved from. People are so much more than that. It's about walking in someone else's shoes, and that's where documentaries come in. Documentaries make that possible. It's been many years since I was 6, but I think I'm still talking back as a filmmaker. I don't know if films change the world, but they play an important role because they can open up our minds, and that's where change begins. In one of my documentaries, I wanted to capture the experience of 3 girls who enter 9th grade at top independent schools. They're Cambodian American, Egyptian American, and African American. For the first time in their lives, they find themselves to be different from the other 14-year-olds around them. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I should tell you that I was the only brown-skinned student at my school, at this school. After a screening of that film, a woman came up to me and told me she was surprised that one of the characters, Sarah, listened to music on Zoom 100 radio, just like her daughter. She was surprised that Sarah argued with her mother about permission to go to parties, just like her daughter. She was surprised that she and Sarah's mother had the same worries. She herself was white and obviously affluent. When she first saw Sarah and her mother on screen, she thought they were unknowable strangers whose differences blinded her. Of course, they were Muslim and Egyptian and not affluent. That has to be recognized. But she hadn't seen that they were also a mother and daughter. Now, it's true a film can open up a window onto a world we've never seen before. It can also hold up a mirror in which we see ourselves. And if we dare to risk the discomfort of the unfamiliar, we may even find common ground. People have been doing that for years. But do we value our history of conflict more than our history of peace? How do we know that we can do better if we don't remember that sometimes we've done well? I arrived in Philadelphia as a child with my parents, who came as graduate students and ended up staying. But we were not the first people to come from India to America. The first Indians came to America in the 1890s. I don't know if anyone asked them when they were going back, but they didn't go back. They were devout Muslims who married devout Christians, Sikhs who married Catholics, men from remote villages of Bengal whose wives were big city African Americans, farmers from Punjab whose wives were Mexican immigrants. They knew about differences long ago. They married, built families. They had to make it work. They reinvented their world and ours. I tell the story of one such family in my next documentary. Maybe we can learn from them. Maybe we can stop calling people the other. What does that mean anyway? Different? We're all different from one another. We're all others to someone. We can all give each other a glimpse of the world as we've never looked at it before. That's what people do for each other. I made a documentary about one family's search for a new normal after their son Eric's traumatic brain injury. I had never worked with the main character who couldn't move freely or speak like most of us do. I wasn't sure how to direct him. He insisted on spelling words and making odd sounds. He shared frightening truths about how he was Eric number 2 because Eric number 1 had died. He spoke of his wife, daring viewers to believe he had one. He called his brother's fiancée his own girlfriend. Was he teasing his brother, the filmmaking team, or the audience? You never knew what he would say or do next. Would anyone even want to or be able to enter his world? And then I realized that I had to let him be himself on camera. With all his broken parts, still a whole person, a person not limited and defined by the issues surrounding brain injury. That's the only way the story would be complete, because Eric could take me somewhere I've never been, and we would all find ourselves in his broken parts. People in documentaries can do that for their audience. They can spark such an abundance of emotions when there's nuance and complexity and wholeness. When we let people tell their stories from the inside. It's the only way to smudge the neatly drawn lines separating them and us. Because we are them and they are us. Our differences don't have to divide us. That's why I think we need to build bridges to meet the people on the other side. Thanks for listening.